effect of Maya. Whether you see it from a terrorist or whether you see it from in another form,
Right.
it always comes down to the same root cause. We can look to try to deal with it at a micro level and let's deal with it incident by incident. What Sikhism attempts to do is deal with it at a macro level, and we look to tackle these 5 traits which cause these problems, and that's probably the wider message we're failing to get out. We always are talking about Sikhs are not being recognized. We also need to let people know what is a message in our faith that makes us so unique like this, and what makes us Chardi Kala, and why we want everyone should know about it, because it's a good message for the world. We're not preaching our faith as much as we should be, and it's a shame.
Yeah, well, the Sikhs don't preach their faith. They are not missionaries. They respect other religions, but ultimately...
I'll have to contradict you on that. Guru Nanak went travelling
well, yeah,
all around and preaching his faith.
I'd agree with Preet on that one. I think.
No, what I'm saying, what I mean by preaching is if we don't ram it down people's throats and say, if you don't believe in this, then you are not worthy, or whatever that means.
Correct.
That's my point.
But that's not
our role is not. Our role is not missionary orientated. Our role is to, and I do take your point about the fact that if people know who we are, it's also important for them to know what we stand for as well. And if we stem this back to, let's put this back to where we originally started this program from. That with Sodi's situation, look at the humility of that guy who collects his money and wants to put it to help the victims, yet unfortunately ends up being a victim himself from somebody who is, unfortunately, somebody who was just premeditated in terms of wanting to kill him. Yet he wanted to get an American flag and put it outside his house as well, because he knew that there could be an issue there.
But would you say Americans are proud of that killer? Do you think Americans would say he represents us?
No, I don't think Americans are proud of that killer, but I do.
They incarcerated him, and
they incarcerated him. The fact that he tried to plead insanity or whatever it was. My point about this is the fact that I think there's a memorial, and that somebody who is a victim, even post 9/11, should also be recognised and be put down as the fact that this is almost like a ripple effect, and that person also died. It wasn't just the people that died. It wasn't just the people who died on the day. There were people who died within days. I think, were you telling me a story about a doctor or somebody who helped somebody in New York? And
that's right. Yeah, I believe the first victim of 9/11, excluding the the people in the towers themselves, was a Sikh chap who was helping somebody, run away from the cloud of dust, as the buildings collapsed, and he was verbally abused by several people, and but the point I wanted to make, which we haven't made, was that Bin Laden. We wear the turban, and it's almost unfortunate that Bin Laden wore a turban as well, because there's a lot of ignorance out there in America. A lot of people associating Bin Laden with us, and we're anything but that.
We're so far away from that; it's unbelievable.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it's unfortunate. There is that turban wearing culture in Islam. We won't go into that, but that's why he wore it. But unfortunately, we get tagged with him now, and so that is an issue. That's an issue that we're trying to address. We've been trying to address for 10 years that we're different. We're not the same.
Okay, let's see if there's any calls that have come through. If you want to give us a call, you've got the number down below. We'd love you to join in with the conversation. We haven't done calls before in this program, but you could be one of the first few callers coming in to tell us what you think about this particular subject. Like I said, we're very grateful to Sikh Channel for giving us an opportunity to do a program in English that actually addresses current affairs during the week, and this is a very current affair, and it will be an affair that continues into the future. So if there are any calls, pick up that phone and dial the number, and we'd love you to be part of this program. So we'll be waiting for your calls. In the meantime, while you're hitting those dials and wanting to come and talk to us, let's return to the subject. What can we do now, 10 years on, right? Think about it in 10 years' time, right? What will be the case? Do you think Sikhs will be better known? Do you think there'll be more Sikhs in the media? Do you think there'll be more information about the fact that we stand for equality and freedom and we're not anything to do with that kind of crazy terrorists that are out there?
I don't think that's the issue. The issue is just plain hatred. You've got a Sikh Prime Minister of India. A person with a turban is just as much seen on the media nowadays because of that.
Right.
Yet that hatred is still there.
Okay,
So
good point.
it's is it ignorance or is it just plain hatred for something that is different, something that stands out? And maybe this is something Guruji has given us because we have to bring that hatred out in people so they can tackle it. We look so different. We we stand up out from a mile away. And there is a reason for that. There is design in how we appear.
There's apparently, I was watching, someone said to me, there's apparently a Mir Khan who's a Bollywood actor. Doesn't he do this thing called Incredible India, which is some kind of commercial advert for people should go and visit India? And then there's a thing called, he's done a thing where this tourist comes in, happens to be a white lady who's taken a scooter, and she gets accosted, and then the Sikh guy stops and saves the girl.
Oh,
right? And
yes,
it says, well,
yes,
you can always trust on Sikh guy doing that. That's good press for the Sikhs, isn't it? You wouldn't necessarily, we don't necessarily have that kind of stuff in the West, though, do we?
Yeah. I mean, just going back to Gurpreet's point, I think we're making progress. In terms of ensuring that people know that we're different. We're not. We're different from Muslims. We're a separate religion.
Ultimately, one could argue with you that it doesn't matter whether an American immigration person or if you're going through Italian immigration or whatever immigration you're going through. It's a question of racial profiling. It doesn't matter if you're a Muslim or you are a Hindu or you are a Sikh. People should be treated fairly, and they should be treated, and fairly means the same, right? And that racial profiling shouldn't take place. So it's not like someone saying to them, "I'm not a Muslim." Doesn't mean that's okay. You can do it to a Muslim, but you shouldn't do it to a Sikh. Ultimately, you shouldn't do that kind of thing to anyone because your technology should be smart, advanced enough to be able to pick up on those issues. If there is a possible risk.
Well, if we're looking at really that, going back to maybe this airport security issue and technology, I just, again, don't see where and how racial profiling comes into it.
Okay.
Because the intelligence should be good enough to know that, this, we know we've been tracking this person or we have information on this person. If you're entering an airport, you would have gone in with travel documents. They're now much better than they used to be, much more secure, not easy to forge now, and things have moved on with biometrics. I'm just not convinced on that by stopping everyone with a turban and a beard you're going to catch a terrorist, because there just hasn't been any instances of that. So if that's how our border security is spending their budgets, they're wasting money in a time of a recession. They really need to get their act together.
So let's go back to the question. We did do a program on and I do think that obviously security, whatever happens in the next 10 years is maybe they'll get more sophisticated with what they do. But looking 10 years on, are we still? What can we do? I guess what it is I'm looking for ideas. What can people do out there? People that are listening to a program, people who live in this country, people who are the next generation. What can they do to help ensure that, not necessarily the racial profiling situation, but the fact that we hope that there won't be another one of those situations, but things are better for communities. Because all the points that I made earlier on about communities, things like bullying, racial discrimination, profiling, hate crimes, properties vandalized. Okay, so they happen in the US. They happen here as well. You know,
Well, I think
what can we do as a community to stop that from happening?
We saw that answer a few weeks ago when the riots happened. Previously, we'd been a very introverted community, busy with ourselves, go to the Gurdwara, make langar and feed it to ourselves. And all of a sudden, there was a big attack going on in London, rioting, looting everywhere. There was a feeling that law and order had gone, and Sikhs came out to protect.
Right.
Instead of being
So
introverted, we became extrovert, and we became open, public, and standing up for other people and helping other people. And that is one of the things we've covered is the concept of seva, and we need to pick up on that. We look different, we are different, and we need to show the public why we are different and why that difference is
Shall I
a
tell you
good
what my
difference.
issue is at the end of the day is that I mentioned this to the guest that we had a couple of weeks ago, and I also think this is more of a media issue. We can do great things, and we need to do things in an honest and humble way. And as a historian, right, you can record that, okay, the fact that these things have actually done, you know, in 10 years' time you might, you know, write a couple of books that talk about this is what's happened over the last few years in terms of certain people or certain personalities who've done things. But you're writing a book, you've got a publisher. Have we got a route in the media world to be taken seriously? Because one argument could be, and I'll put this to you, that a few weeks ago you mentioned the example about the fact that Sikhs came out and they were seen as, you know, people that are protectors. That's good. That's good. But we're also other things as well. We're humanitarians. You know, we had Ravi Singh on last week. Ravi Singh, you know, when you listen to Ravi Singh and you hear him talk about all the great things that Khalsa Aid does, if you look at organisations like Savi Seeks, if you look at other organisations where there are professionals getting together and they're getting more integrated into the general mainstream as well as the businesses and the professions that they're in, you know, you've got, you know, surgeons and doctors and, you know, chemists and, you know, we are in so many, you know, good senior professional positions. My question to you is, all of that is hidden because the media doesn't let us get into the mainstream. What can we do about it?
I think we're getting there.
We get choice stories.
The media,
we get choice stories. We don't get.
Let's take a look at the media. What does the media concentrate on? The media concentrates on negativity. It concentrates on negative stories. Maybe it's a good thing we're not getting into the media because we're not doing negative things. You know, if you were famous and you did 100 good acts, the media is not going to cover you. Once they've hacked your phone and discovered you got a mistress, then you're on the front page. Right. So it's the media's out there for to play to people's maya again, to play to people's desire for.
Yeah, but if you want to change somebody's mindset, right? Does that mean that we need to have more of our own media channels? We all talk, whatever media channels there are out there, talk good things. They talk good things between each other, and they have campaigns that they conduct together.
The media needs to make money out of advertising, and they might judge, well, there's just not enough segment of good people. We need all those bad people watching our programs too, and there's more of them, and they're good spenders on our advertisers' products.
And it's not good press for media for organisations to be public with what they feel as well. You know, in terms of they should sort out their issues internally and then go public, shouldn't they?
I think what we need to do is just work at grassroots level with people around us. If you are a Sikh, you're out there in a workplace and your colleagues don't know who or what you are or why you are, then...
but they won't necessarily pick up a book, will they?
You can tell them.
You can tell them that there's a really good book written by Amarpal Singh. You should go and get that book, you know?
You could tell them about yourself.
Yeah.
So that creates awareness.
I think the problem is that most news is bad news. So, you know, if you watch the 9 o'clock news every night, you know, there's one or the other incident, you know, somebody's died, whatever, planes crashed or terrorist incident or whatever, you know, stock market's gone down or whatever. If it goes up, you know, it's very rarely news. If the stock market crashes, you know, 4 or 5%, it's straight on, for
Right.
headlines.
Because it's it's money
Yeah,
oriented, isn't
yeah.
it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So our community does a lot of good stuff, but it's not bad news, So it's never gonna get in there in front of the news, really.
But there are people that are working in communities today, whether it be in Birmingham or Manchester, wherever they are. They're doing good things in local communities, aren't they? They are. One thing that I always find amazing is there's the Olympic thing happening next year, and you can run with the torch if you're nominated, which is really good. You're nominated a person in the community who can effectively carry the flag for a while and then pass it on to somebody else as part of the relay. That's a great thing to do, to kind of celebrate individuals. Maybe if we celebrated individuals more about what they've done, or the fact that they're helping other people, and that kind of covers across all of this other negativity associated with, like for example, well that guy must be like this, and therefore he looks like that, therefore he must be like that. Do you know what I mean? It's like you're typecasting and stereotyping. It's convenient to stereotype, right? It's easy, isn't it?
It is. It's again, it's sensationalizing things in the media is very easy to do. All it takes is for a particular newspaper to publish an article against a particular ethnic group, and people suddenly start reading it without naming a particular newspaper. But Savi, if you go onto their online sites and you suddenly see they've done an article, and it's anti-Asian. And you start looking at their comments, and you suddenly see a whole load of hatred.
Yeah, there's a lot of hatred
and,
there.
If going back to the 9/11 scenario, if it was hatred that drove these terrorists to attack, yet there's that same hatred which caused someone to kill Balbir Singh Sodhi.
Yeah.
Hatred isn't something which is unique to one terrorist group. It's universal. And that's what's got to be tackled.
Okay, but I got a final question for both of you. Do you think that now it's 10 years on, and the term used was there was a war on terror? Obviously, they went into Afghanistan, and then people went into Iraq, I should say, and this kind of term, the war on terror, has been developed. Are we in 10 years' time going to be? Is that going to be over? Is it going to be worse? What's your predictions?
I don't
I'm looking for your optimistic outlook.
I think in 10 years' time we'll look back with regret on the term war on terror.
Really?
Because it's not been a war on terror. It's just been all about regime changes. And I'm not convinced enough has been done to stop terrorism, because terrorism has increased since this war on terror began. Therefore, it's not been dealt with. There's a lot of hatred out there, and no one's really dealt with it.
Well, you could argue that it has been dealt with to a certain extent. That that there's been a lot more intel, that systems and procedures have changed, and there's tightening up of. Sometimes it's a bit too much.
That's your defending yourself against terrorism, but why create the terrorist in the first place?
Right.
When a child growing up in Iraq realizes he has no parents because they were killed,
right,
and he's going to think about revenge, and he
No,
becomes
I hope
easy
not.
prey
Yeah.
for someone looking to recruit in a terrorist organization.
I would disagree slightly with Gurpreet. I think we are
I like
winning
to be
the
an
war on
optimist.
terror. I think you've got to do something, something after 9/11, and there's been numerous other terrorist incidents as well. And these are state-sponsored, or if they're not state-sponsored, then, you've got a huge network of, terrorist organizations in certain countries which don't have, law and order, like Afghanistan, northwest of Pakistan, and some of these Arab countries, the leadership is, shall we say, suspect.
What we could say is, though,
so if you don't address that,
I agree.
You're almost telling the terrorists that, you can do what you like, we won't respond, and to me, that's a sure loser.
Thinking about it optimistically, right? If you look at the regime change that happened anyway by the people, for the people, right? People going out there and wanting to see possibly leaders that had lots of money stashed away, you know, be removed. You know, I mean, Mubarak is one example. You've had a situation in, you know, Egypt and some of the surrounding places. That has been people driving that change, right? So let's be positive that there are people out there in those organizations, like for example, there are you know, Muslim nations out there, and they've been striving to. The only thing we can hope for is that in 10 years' time, you know, that those regimes that are new now, with fresh governments, have got a fresh outlook, they work closely with other countries, and they're better for it. So I guess we're coming up to the end of the program, really. I just wanted to say thanks very much for joining us on the show. It's a very difficult subject to talk about. We have covered a lot of issues here. We did talk about racial profiling. We spoke about the Savi Seeks murder situation, which is terrible. Even though the guy was collecting money to help support those victims within hours of it actually happening. Historically, I think it'll be interesting to see how this is recorded. I think that ultimately we have to be optimistic. I would rather take an optimistic perspective. If those countries are changing, we hope they will change for the better, and we hope that any countries that have been affected will not continue down that terrorist route. And people ultimately need to respect each other for who they are. Greater mutual understanding, better relationships, better understanding of who Sikhs are so that they don't get confused, and then ultimately treating people the same. Not saying we treat you differently because you're this, but we say we treat you all the same